Okay, for the introduction, the paper is called "How Can Social Media Limit Disinformation?" And let me first go a bit into what it means in reality. What is disinformation? What it means to limit disinformation in this paper. So there is a problem to which academic literature and media often point out that politicians spread disinformation, which are false facts that help them gain popularity. And of course, politics is often very ambiguous. We can often say whether some policy is good or bad. However, there are some obviously false facts which need to verify that politicians nevertheless claim to be true. For example, in 2020, Trump lost the US elections, however, he claimed repeatedly that he actually won them. And at about the same time, Brazil's now former president Jair Bolsonaro claimed that there was some very easy cure for COVID, and he did that to downplay the threat of COVID, which was hitting the country really bad. So this paper is about limiting disinformation, and I'm going to talk about the practice of fact-checking. So what exactly is fact-checking? It's when a social media platform like Facebook looks at a post which believes contains a false fact, and then it adds a label to this post which says that there is disinformation, and it also points to a more reliable source where people can go and verify what more relevant information is. So there are many other ways in which social media can try to limit disinformation. For example, we have heard about social media just pushing people off Facebook temporarily or forever. We have there are ways to tweak the algorithm so that you see more reliable sources more often. However, here I'm limiting the paper to fact-checking. So an important part of fact-checking is that information is not removed. You can see the original post, but you can also see the correction.
You are very general because what about God's existence?
Whatever what?
God's existence.
God's existence. Okay, so fact-checking is first of all about facts which are easy to verify, like this cure for COVID or winning the elections. And you know, it's not about complicated policy issues like whether it's good to have taxes on the rich. So if I say that it's good to tax the rich or it's bad to tax the rich, then I won't be fact-checked because it's a very complicated question and it's hard to verify that, you know, if I like, let's say taxes in my life. Also, it doesn't deal with philosophical questions like God's existence. And Laszlo once pointed out whether I can post an unverified mathematical hypothesis. Will it be fact-checked? No, it won't be fact-checked. So, yeah. Here is an example of fact-checking. So this is from claiming on Facebook that he won the not that he won the 2020 elections, but that voting by mail in the US allows for voter fraud. And here Facebook doesn't remove this post altogether. Instead, it labels it as containing an important statement which carries no evidence. And it also points to a more relevant source where people can learn more about the possibility of voter fraud in US elections. So yeah, I wonder whether something like that could be done about God's existence. I don't know. Maybe I could post something like God exists and they could point me to Richard Dawkins' book or something, but this doesn't happen in reality. Okay, so the main result of the paper is somewhat counterintuitive for economists because it deals with the monopoly power of social media platforms, and it shows that the monopoly power of social media can be good in these contexts. So the main result is roughly as follows. Suppose we have a sector like Facebook, which occupies a newly monopoly position in the country, which is the case of Facebook in many places, like Israel. In Israel, Facebook is very big, and all the other competitors like Twitter are very small. So in this case, if a politician wants to communicate with voters on social media, he needs to use Facebook. And if Facebook decides to fact-check this person, then this politician has no option to go somewhere else. So if, let's say, I'm an Israeli politician, and I want to communicate with my voters on the internet. I need to be using Facebook, and if Facebook fact checks me, then I cannot use some other platform, which this is, for example, less of the case in the United States, where there is a social media network called Parler. It was created very recently, and it has no fact checking and no other ways of interfering with what people say. And many conservatives in the United States have decided to use Parler instead of Facebook. So both this happened to both voters and conservative politicians. So in the United States, the fact that there is such an alternative to Facebook makes Facebook more vulnerable to politicians just abandoning because of fact checking. So as a result of that, in a country like the US, Facebook has a less incentive to fact check a politician. Why? Because if I fact check a politician, she can go away to somewhere. And if this politician leaves my platform, then some part of my audience will also leave my platform. So it's bad for me because I can get few users.
Right, but
yeah,
isn't the presence of such social media a consequence of fact checking and deplatforming? So like previously they didn't have Parler, they didn't have Truth Social, they created this exactly because they felt that they were fact checked and deplatformed and things like that. So it's
So going a bit, I think I can see to this argument in this paper, there will always be two platforms. However, there will be some parameter which shows how ex-ante attractive is basically Facebook. So I think that the story that you are saying, it can be expressed as a version of the story that my model is saying, because in some countries Facebook is very popular and it is very hard to create some other platform. Let's say in Hungary, as far as I know, the government wanted to create some alternative to Twitter, but as far as I know, they didn't really go very far. Yeah, if you know something more concrete, then please share. Yes.
Yeah, minor remark, but I think maybe fact checking was present in Facebook, but it's kind of like telling obviously incorrect information has become kind of fashionable among politicians lately, I would say. And then fact checking became more obvious that it is actually happening and you get this kind of correction there. And then I think there was a discussion whether some of the algorithms are, or perhaps the moderators are biased. And I think this is what created the first controversy.
No, I think that's you know, in my model, I assume at the outset there are two social media platforms. It's just one of them is more attractive than the other. And I think it's quite possible to write a very similar model to what I have, where the second firm just can just decide whether to emerge endogenously. So maybe when you see the model, and make this a bit more. So okay, this basically was the main argument, but I think one of the reasons why we game theory in social science is to be able to tell certain arguments rigorously, show that there is no contradiction in what we're saying, and be explicit about what are our assumptions and which effects are driving the result. And so now I'm going to tell you a very, very simple model which tells the story that I just told you in words, and maybe it has some other effects. And just before I go on with this, I want to reiterate that the problem of disinformation on the internet is a very complicated and large one. And fact-checking is just a small part of it, but also fact-checking is something very complicated. And there are many different effects going on here. I wanted to have a tractable model which is easy to analyze and which does the same story. So in a lot of places, I have to simplify things. And you know, your feedback on which assumptions can be relaxed would be really valuable. Yeah, however, I warn you in advance that there will be many like stretches and many things which are very, very stylized. Okay, so like any game theory model has to start with the players. There are three types of players here. So first of all, there is one politician. We can think of her as the incumbent who is trying to persuade voters to support her in the upcoming elections. for simplicity, I assume that there is only one politician. So while this is not true in many democratic countries, first of all, it really simplifies the model because we don't really know how to solve models where there are two politicians who can all communicate with voters. So I don't even know such models. That's like one major reason why I think there is only one of them. The second reason is that, well, it can be assumed that there is only one person who is a strategic communicator and who kind of have the attention of voters, and maybe there are other politicians, but they exist outside of the model. So the second type of players are voters. The voters will try to learn whether the politician is good or bad based on some information they get on social media, and then they will decide whether to vote for the politician or against the politician. So we can think of this as voting, however, we can just think of this as supporting the politician. And there are quite a few regimes, like the Russian one, for example, where the politicians do care about how much support voters give to them. However, there are no real elections. And so we can think of this relationship between voters and the politicians, just that the politician needs the support of the voters. Maybe it's not elections, maybe it's something else. So finally, there is an intermediary here. The intermediary are the social media platforms. The social media platforms are going to provide a forum for the politician to talk to the voters. So here there are two important departures from the usual signaling models and from the usual model of elections. Here, all the information that exists in the model is provided by the politician. So the politician knows something and she is telling this to the voters. And however, we are only looking at communication on the internet, and so the politician can only communicate to voters through these platforms. So again, in reality, it's not true. In reality, we have just traditional newspapers, we have handwritings, we have television, but here I want to look at only the segment of the politics which exists on the internet, and so I assume away all these other traditional media. So what do all these people want? The politician just wants to ensure that the majority of voters vote for her or support her. The voters care about two things, actually three things. So first of all, any voter wants to support the politician if the politician is good and not support her otherwise. So the politician can be objectively good or bad. That's the same thing for all voters. And everyone wants to support a good politician and not a bad one. However, every person also has an intrinsic attitude to the politician. So the voters are going to be distributed in terms of their example attitude to the politician, which is not depend on whether the politician is good or bad. The better is my attitude to the politician, the more utility I get, I'll be getting as a voter from voting for her. This can model many things. For instance, we can think about ideology. Let's say in the United States, people do care about what the politician's previous records. For instance, if Trump had some shady relationships in the past, that's not a good thing for some voters. However, if I'm a conservative in the US, even if I'm not a big fan of Trump person, I would still like to vote for him just because I share the same ideology. So you can think of these intrinsic attitude as modeling many things. This could be personal attitude to a politician, this could be ideology. Okay, so these are two political things, yeah.
So then you say that you are modeling the so-called swing voters on, because you are not taking care of the indoctrinated voters.
Yes, indeed, I'm only caring about voters who can potentially switch their opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. So one way to take care of indoctrinated voters in this model would be to say, okay, there are also these amounts of diehard right-wingers, this amount of diehard left-wingers, and in this case, we need to win not the majority, not like exactly half of these swing voters, but maybe like a quarter of the swing voters to become the president. So I'm not doing this in the model, but it can be easily done by using like a different score, not 50%, but something else. Yeah. Okay, so last but not least, the voters care about using a good platform. There's going to be two platforms in this model. One of them is ex ante, more pleasant to use for everyone, and everyone is going to get a fixed utility from using this more popular platform. So in many countries, Facebook is something that people are used to. Facebook has a lot of people there irrespective of politics, something like, your friends, relatives, neighbors that you want to interact with. Also, Facebook has a very nice user interface. It's pleasant to use. It's protected against bugs or data leaks. And all of this is less of a case for Parler. For instance, when Parler was just launched, it had some bugs that made it unpleasant to use. Not so many people use Parler. Not many people use Parler just for personal use, not because of politics, so it has a small community of people. So if I had to choose, like if US citizens had to choose between Facebook and Parler, all things being equal, of course, you would choose Facebook, only some special reason to use Parler. So I'm going to introduce this effectiveness parameter for social media, which model this effect. And I'm going to show that the more example effective is Facebook, the easier it is for Facebook to fact check. That's going to be the main comparative static variable. So at least for the social media one, yeah.
Just a quick question. Is there going to be any sort of network effect? So if many people go to Parler, then if Parler becomes more attractive towards anyone?
So no, there is not going to be such a network effect. I think that it just complicates the model a little bit and maybe creates redundant equilibrium where, let's say, everyone goes to Parler because everyone goes to Parler, everyone goes to Facebook because everyone goes to Facebook. And our captures maybe assume away mechanically that such equilibrium don't exist. Yeah, however, I've heard these comments before. The paper is kind of going to review in the journal, and maybe if they say something like this, then it's not hard to introduce this in the model. Okay, so the social media platform cared about two things. First of all, everyone wants a higher share of people who use it, which is because they can show advertisements or sell people's data and so on. But also there are exogenous cost benefits of fact checking. So first of all, what are the costs? On Facebook, fact checking occurs through automatic detection of falsehoods and through partnership with journalistic organizations. So this costs money, especially the first one. Journalists are quite cheap, what programmers are. However, there are also some net benefits of fact checking. And usually it's deals with external pressure of the government and internal pressure of the employees themselves. So a couple of years ago, the Congress of the United States initiated hearings with which involved the American tech leaders, and part of the allegations that the Congress brought against Mark Zuckerberg and the other CEOs was that the platforms helped spread disinformation. So probably the CEO don't want that. Also, there is quite a lot of political pressure on the birds, the employees. In Twitter and Facebook, the majority of employees are Democrats, so there were a lot of allegations that Trump was spreading disinformation, and so these people were pressing their firms to be more harsh on online disinformation, which could quite possibly involve more pressure to fact checking. So I'm going to summarize these two things as exogenous shocks. So the model is going to happen that before firms decide whether they want to fact check or not, they're going to learn how much it's going to cost in terms of money, and maybe how disgruntled are the employees or their governments that is going to press them to fact check. Yeah, so this is at its core a signaling model, and what's going to happen is that the politician will try to signal that she's like good. I call this competent in the model, but these can be thought about as being good or bad. Yeah, it will only be able to spread information through social media, and there's going to be this effect that if one of the social media is exactly more popular, then it will be more likely that it will continue to use exactly this social media, and so if you lie, then you're going to face fact checking. Okay. Sorry, Attila, how am I doing in terms of time?
You have about 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
Yes.
40. Okay, that's great. So I can walk you through some specific examples. So one of the countries where I think the effect that the model outlines work is Brazil. In Brazil, the former President Bolsonaro claims that COVID is not a big threat. In fact, he faced fact checking on Facebook. And what he started doing was that he started telling people to join him on Parler, which I mentioned before, the Telegram. Telegram is a messenger service which is popular in countries like Russia and Iran, but also popular in Brazil. So Bolsonaro explicitly urged voters to go to follow him on some other platforms, not on Facebook, just like in my story. So, however, in Brazil, Telegram and Parler are quite small, and Facebook is really big. So many people indeed started following him on these smaller social media, and in fact remain on Facebook. To compare, there are countries where, so in Israel, there's a similar story that Facebook is very big and other social media are very small, and so there is active fact checking against Israeli politicians. So the rest of other countries where this is not true, for instance, in Germany, about 60% of respondents say they use Facebook, and about 30% say they use Twitter, which is a really high share for Twitter. So let's say in Israel, there is about 2% who use Twitter, and in Israel, it's quite a lot. And in Germany, at least at the time of the writing of this paper, there were quite few journalistic organizations that were partnering with Facebook, and the ones who were partnering with them said that Facebook wasn't giving them a lot of funding, a lot of directions on how to work, and also they were missing a lot of disinformation that was going on Facebook. So it appears that in Germany, the fact-checking efforts of Facebook were much less than, let's say, in Israel and Brazil. And I think this is not the case that German politicians are just all clean, because in Germany there is the Alternative for Germany party, which spread fake information about migrants. So again, migration is a very debatable topic, but they just inflated the number of migrants. So what European politicians often say is that there are much more migrants in their country than there really is, and that's what this party was doing. So I think that it might be that the social media markets difference in these countries drives the fact that in some countries Facebook fact checks politicians more actively than in others, even though that's the same company with which declares some values that it wants to provide accurate information.
Wait, just a quick question. Yeah. The 60 against 30%, how does that how is that counted? How is that measured? So people are either on one of them, either on Facebook, either on Twitter, because I would think that most people are on both. They just don't care about one of the accounts that much.
Well, that's just the number of people who are using Facebook. So 60% of people say they're using Facebook, 30% say they're using Twitter, and they might overlap. Yes, still, I think it makes sense to compare these numbers. Let's say in Israel, I think 90+ people are using Facebook, and like I think less than 3% are using Twitter. So despite the overlaps, it still shows that in Israel, Facebook is like virtually a monopoly, and in Germany it isn't.
So we have such figures for Hungary, for instance?
No, but I think that in Hungary is closer to Israel than to Germany, as far as I remember. So I think that Twitter use is not so big. Okay, so here is some comparison. So these are the top picture is Bolsonaro's is a screenshot from Bolsonaro's Telegram account, which I found using my own Telegram account. And this is what I got when I searched Bolsonaro on Facebook. So you see that there is like almost almost a six-fold difference in terms of how many subscribers are on Facebook and how many on Telegram. So it shows that even though it's the same politician, people are reluctant to follow their favorite politician on some thing which is like weird, and how this compares to Facebook. So another effect which is going on in the model deals with the popularity of the politician herself. So if a politician ex ante has a lot of popularity, which is not dependent on how good or bad she is, so this is something like ideology that I mentioned before, then people are more interested in hearing what she says, and it even leads to swing voters. So if I'm a swing voter, however my general attitude to the politician is positive, then it's quite possible that the politician will persuade me to vote for her. And in this case, I'm interested in listening to what she says. So conversely, if I'm a swing voter but lean against the politician, then probably it means that she's unlikely to persuade me to vote for her. So I'm not that interested in what she says. And so because of these effects, if the politician is more popular, people are more willing to follow what she said. Again, the same thing that I mentioned before happens if a social media platform decides to fact check and the politician is popular, the politician might go to somewhere else, and other people will also switch social media to follow this politician. Because if she's popular, then people would like to know what she says and converse not. I think this again applies to Bolsonaro. Because of COVID, he was not very popular, even though he was next president. And because of that, his affair with Telegram and Svarla did not work very well. I think the opposite is going on in Hungary and in India. I think that in both countries, the prime minister is genuinely popular. And so because of these, the threat that these people could avoid Facebook was credible for Facebook. And in Hungary, the fact checking started later than in other European countries. Also, in the news agencies that fact check, that are responsible for fact checking across different countries, there are different teams responsible for fact checking, and in Hungary, this team consists of only one person. So maybe Hungary is not a very big market for Facebook, but still there is only one person who is responsible for fact checking in Hungary. So that's shows that it's not very accurate. Also in Hungary, Facebook pledged that it's not going to fact check politicians. So which shows that maybe they are not very interested in fact checking in this country. In India, interesting thing happens. First, Twitter and Facebook decided to fact check the government, but then the government announced that it's going to launch an alternative to Twitter, which was called Coup, which was basically something that was created on the spot to be rival for Facebook and Twitter. Also, there was some political pressure on the local offices, which is outside of the model, but important in the real world. And so basically these tech firms abandoned fact checking in India. So I think that's, while there were many other factors, the genuine popularity of Narendra Modi was one of the reasons why they decided to go against him in the end.
But
Yeah.
little fact checking can also mean that the politician is not making the kind of statement that can be fact checked. So I don't remember Orbán posting anything like, I don't know, the state of the world in X is X, but I'm claiming it's minus X. So I don't think those kind of statements are that frequent.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember anything like that.
Okay, yeah, to my shame, I don't follow Hungarian politics that much, but for instance, Orbán recently claimed that Ukraine was a failed state like Afghanistan.
Is that a factual claim? I mean, failed state. So it's.
Well, okay, it's maybe it's not like the number of migrants or like whether COVID is a curable disease, but you know, if you compare Ukraine and Afghanistan, then like Ukraine is not like Afghanistan. So I think this was something close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, back to my question.
Sorry.
Yeah, back to my question.
I don't think so, because there's no. I don't think there's falsifiable claim there.
That's the point.
Yeah, I think the difference between these two is that one thing is that there is like a commonly shared opinion, and whether you should weed out somebody who is saying something else, or whether something is a fact and you should weed out somebody who denies facts, right? So I think that's the difference.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we can debate it later, and Yeah, I've heard. I read materials by researchers from CU that this body does quite a lot of disinformation and it should be fact checked, but maybe that's their somewhat biased opinion.
No, I'm not saying that they are not lying on Facebook. I'm saying that it's much more subtle than this, and probably if so the comparison is not fair.
Okay, I see.
I think because it's very different kind of messaging going on than in case of Bolsonaro.
Okay, well maybe. Okay, so here is the model finally. So here is some notation first of all. So I'm going to model the politician's type by a random variable, which is binary, and there's going to be a binary type. The politician is going to be either bad, which means that theta is 0, and or good if theta is 1. So the politician type is theta. Next, there's going to be a signal that the politician provides to the voters through social media. The signal is noted by S, and it is also binary. So signal 0 means that you can see that something is wrong, and S equals 1 means that your entity is good. Finally, there are going to be these exogenous net benefits of fact checking. I'm going to denote them as VA and VB. They're going to be random variables that a firm is going to learn and make a decision whether to fact check or not. So there are going to be exogenous parameters. First of all, there's going to be this voters' attitude to the politician is going to be labeled R, and there's going to be some distribution of voters in terms of this parameter. There's going to be the exact effectiveness of the platform A. So there are two platforms which I usually label A and B, and the effectiveness of from A, which is basically created between the model, is going to be labeled M. So high M means that all things being equal, everyone wants to use Facebook more. Finally, there's going to be one politician and going to allow to vote for the politician or against the politician, and support the politician or not support the politician. And to make things simple, I'm going to assume that there is a single utility of not supporting the politician, which I label as U. So there are going to be many different ways of modeling the same trade-offs, but this utility specification probably is going to be quite simple. And finally, an important output parameter of this model is the bias P. The bias P is going to define how biased the signal S is in favor of the politician. So if P is high, the politician is going to provide a good signal about herself, even if she's bad with a high probability. And if P is low, it means that the politician is kind of sincere.
So can you have a bad politician who is sincere and vice versa?
So
is this not kind of related?
So here is going to be a model of signaling where a politician first chooses the bias and then this quality is realized. So I'm going to talk about it a bit later. Okay, so just to repeat, the players are these one politician, two platforms, and the voters. The voters are going to be distributed over the line segment 0-1 in terms of their affinity to the politician R, and going to denote the distribution as F. So here is how information works. I think this is technically the most complicated part of this otherwise simple model. So the politician can be good or bad with equal probability, and it's measured by one random variable. So before the game starts, the politician chooses a bias. The bias in the model reflects the probability with which, if he's bad, he will produce a good signal. And what this bias reflects is the choice of information sources that the politician uses to convince voters to support her. So, for instance, these information sources would be people that advise the politician. Let's say when Trump became president, he appointed a lot of like-minded conservatives, his advisors, and this created an uproar in the Democratic camp. So why did he do this? One of the reasons was not to get the most important, was maybe not to get the most accurate information about himself, but to have people around people which provide facts to the population that would be supportive of them. So another thing that Trump was doing was that he was often quoting Fox News in his social media posts. So Fox News, I don't think that Fox News is like just a sort of fake news or that they are like absolutely not credible. They are a somewhat credible and respected newspaper. It's just on the conservative front. And even though it has a reputation, it can be trusted to a large degree, it usually provides facts in a way that supports the conservative politicians. So the effect that Trump achieved by opposing Fox News was that he was using the newspaper's position and the newspaper's channels reputation to support that, to support the claim that what he's doing is right. And on the other hand, because Fox News is quite conservative, he was sure that if he's using Fox News as a source of information, is going to often take his side, so it's going to move voters to the right direction for him. For this maybe is not the most intuitive way of signaling, however, like it's currently gaining momentum in economics, and so the Bayesian persuasion approach. More generally, the Bayesian persuasion means that before I share some information with you, and before I actually learn anything myself, I commit to the way I'm going to provide information to you. And so this reflects things like that. For instance, which people I appoint to communicate on my behalf, or what kind of facts will I provide to support what I claim. So there are a lot of debates on whether this commitment assumption is valid, but I think there are quite a few things in the real world which this thing applies to, and also it's often used in applied in picture model communication. So I'll be happy to have a discussion on that maybe after the talk. How information transmission basically works in the model. Voter can use one of the social media platforms. And if a voter uses social media platforms which fact checks, and the politician also uses social media platform, then the voter observes the truth. So obviously it's a big spreadsheet, maybe one of the biggest spreadsheets in the paper, because some people just don't react to fact checking. So some people are just not persuadable. Also, there is some evidence that fact checks sometimes backfire. So still why I make this assumption, because maybe if we're talking about swing voters, then if people learn the actual truth, then they can change their minds. Also, there is research by Sergey Guyev and authors that if people see the fact checks, then they're less likely to share a piece of this information compared to the situation when they don't use fact checking. So there is some evidence that fact checks can change people's minds. So if a person uses a platform, and this platform, if a voter uses a platform, the politician uses this platform, and this platform does not fact check, then a voter observes this bias signal, which you can see on the screen. Basically, if the politician is good, then the signal is always good. If the politician is bad, the signal is still good. So if he's higher, the signal supports the politician, even when he is bad more often.
So is there any incentive to choose P other than 1?
Yes. So and that's because voters are Bayesian and they know P when they make a decision. So if P is equal to 1, then the signal becomes just black. Okay, so an important feature of this model is that only the politician produces any information, and if I'm using a platform that the politician is not using, I just don't learn anything about politics. I don't learn anything about data. And I stay with my prior ways with what I have. So here is the time of the game. First of all, nature draws theta, but the politician does not observe it yet. And also nature draws the net benefits of fact checking that for the firms that the firms themselves observe, but no one else observes. So yeah, next each just in previous sentence. So next each firm observes its benefit of fact checking and decide whether to fact check out. Oh yes.
So is there any decision of the voters? I mean, do they have any preference towards the truth? And would that I thought that would affect the net benefits of fact checking. So it would not be just a random number, but you know.
Okay, that's so that's an benefit of fact checking for the firm. So it reflects something like government pressure. So it's
I mean, if your readers have a clear preference towards truth, then if you do fact checking, that would mean that you can increase the number of your readers or
Okay.
users.
Yeah, so indeed, there are two things that firms care about. Yeah, there are two things that firms care about. First of all, like you say, if I fact check, then I'm going to attract more voters, and that enters the utility. So that's one thing. The other thing is this random number, which means things like direct cost of fact checking or avoiding government pressure. So let's say if I decide to fact check, I know that I provide better information, I attract more users, that's good for me. However, maybe I also need to pay this cost. So my utility from fact checking basically consists of two things. And here the random variables only account for one of these things for the cost. Yeah.
There's no way.
Sorry?
If fact checking was reporting more things, then why would they need the platform? That's the
Oh, because if if Facebook fact checks, but the politician needs Facebook and communicates somewhere else, and maybe I should also go to somewhere else to follow this politician.
But if these are just more things, so if they learn that the politician is not good because.
So here what's going to happen is that, let's say there is a fact checking on Facebook, and I'm some populist politician, and I just don't use Facebook and I use some other social media platform. And as we go to, you might still be interested in what I say, because you know this bias P, it's not equal to 1, it's something between 0 and 1. And so you understand that I'm going to tell you biased information, but maybe it's still useful information. Yeah, to give an example from like not from democratic politics, but from Russia. In Russia, many people follow the state media for foreign policy. And so polls show that Russians understand that Russian state media are biased. So if you just ask people whether you think that like everything on state TV is true, people just don't agree. So nevertheless, people follow Russian state media because Russian state media are better at like figuring out what's happening in foreign policy. For instance, they can send journalists to the front line, and opposition media can't. So it's one of the reasons why Russian state TV services is because they have access to some information that independent media don't. Like yeah, sorry if it's going to be personal, but when I read Russian like independent media, and they are sometimes voting the like pro-state journalists, because these pro-state journalists have access to what happens in the war, and they can go there. You can't imagine an independent journalists going to Ukraine because she will be immediately arrested.
Could it also be that, so I don't think you're modeling this here, but so where does the profit of the social media platform come from? I mean, typically it comes from politicians paying, or like firms and politicians communicating some message, even though the amount they are willing to pay for this depends on the audience, right? So you want to have readers, but ultimately the money comes from the politician, right? So in a sense, if the politician leaves, you may have lots of readers but no money.
So maybe it's a good modeling suggestion. So here the money just comes from the fact that we have readers, and the politician is not paying anything. And why I think it's accurate, because in reality, what social media do is that they show various ads for the toothpaste to anyone or like travel. And also they collect user data which they can later sell to other firms. Yes, yes, politicians can pay for ads on social media as well, and maybe this would be interesting addition to the model, maybe, but I think the main reason why social media need audience is to like sell them all kinds of ads and not so forth. So here it's just going to be the share of voters, it's your profit component. Then there is this fact-checking decision, which is second stage. And then the politician observes everything that happened before, it knows the fact-checking policies, and she decides to set these bias feed. So again, often we think of the politician herself posting something which can be lies. However, here there is a commitment that I choose the share of falsehood that I include in my communication. And what it's reflecting in the real world is, let's say, what kind of media or what kind of advisors I quote to support my opinion. So next concerns your question. Every voter observes everything that happened before. So she doesn't observe these costs and benefits of fact checking, but that's actually redundant for her choice. She doesn't know P directly, but she knows P. And so if P is 1, then the signal is completely not credible, so I can ignore it. That's why the politician needs to choose this P not too high to make the signal persuasive, but maybe also not too low to sometimes future voters in her favor. So the voter observes everything and she decides which social media to use. Like you said, a lot of people use both Facebook and Twitter, but like in reality, also a lot of people don't care about one of the accounts. Certainly there is only a finite amount of time people need to choose whether they spend more time on Facebook or Twitter. And so here with I think that I only use Facebook or I only use Twitter. One could also assume that I have a linear amount of time and I allocate it between two social media, and the probability of me getting one of the signals depend on how much time I allocate to one of the options, there's going to be irrelevant for the result. And so it's just safe to assume that so it's a multi-fold, I just use one of the solution. Next, after you decide which platform to use, then voters get information based on social media. Again, if a voter uses social media that has no information, I should learn anything, and that's why I should like to learn to go maybe to some free platform that does have information. If a politician uses a fact-checked platform and I use it to I get accurate information, otherwise I get a biased signal. So finally, voters vote for or against the politician. So how much time do we have?
You have about 15 minutes left.
Okay, that's fine. So here are the payoffs. So I think I outlined this intuitively already, but let's go through it formally. A politician gets 1 if she wins half of the votes, and 0 otherwise. So I call it winning the elections, but we can also think of this as getting enough support. And it would be quite straightforward to replace the 1/2 quota with some arbitrary quota. So next, each platform earns its audience share, which stands for the profit motive in the model, plus the net benefit of fact checking. So I think this answers your question and shows how the payouts are decomposed. Next, a voter index R earns exactly R if she votes for the politician, and T equal to 1, and U if she votes against the politician, otherwise she earns 0. So this is basically a simple utility function to capture the trade-off that if I believe that theta has a phi is high, then I'm more likely to vote. I'm more willing to vote for the politician. If my R parameter is high, I'm also more willing to vote for the politician. If U is high, so the outside option is better. I'm more against. I'm less in favor of voting for the politician. And there are many ways to model the same trade-offs closely, but that's just a convenient way to model the same trade-offs. So finally, a voter R gets the benefits M of using platform A, if you use platform A and no benefit otherwise. So M is the same for everyone, it just shows that some platforms just have a bigger audience or nicer user interface. So here is going to be the equilibrium. There exists possible many equilibria, but they are all pair equivalent. And here is one of the equilibria. It can be broken up conveniently into two parameter ranges. One parameter range is when the position of the median voter is small, which means that she doesn't like the politician. The net benefits of the benefit of using platform A is high, and the reservation utility of voting against the politician is also high. It means things are bad for the politician. So in this case, because M is high, the platform A is virtually a monopoly. And no matter what it does, the politician is going to use platform A, and also everyone else is going to use platform A. So everyone else meaning voters. So why is that? Because if the politician uses platform B instead, the majority of voters will still use platform A because it has such high effectiveness, and so I cannot escape anyway as a politician. So in this case, the outcome is going to be at the mercy of platform A and will depend on their net benefit of fact checking, which is going to be driven by the random variable. So it knows that because it's so popular, everyone else is going to use it anyway, and so it only pays attention to this cost parameter. In this case, if it doesn't fact check, it doesn't fact check. And the bias is going to be given by this expression. So what's interesting here is that if the position of the median voter is higher, the bias increases. And if the utility opposed against the politician is higher, the bias decreases. And so why is that? Because I need to persuade the median voter to vote for me, and so I need to make the bias not too high. And so I have to make the median voter exactly indifferent. And so the median voter likes me more than I can increase the bias, because even if my information is not quite correct, she's still going to vote for me. And the opposite effect goes with the utility of voting against the politician. So that's quite a counterintuitive finding in the Bayesian distribution picture overall, that if the center of information is, if the interests of me, the center of information, are more aligned with your interests as a receiver, then there's going to be a bigger bias. So in terms of politics, if government is more popular, there's going to be more propaganda. And it's, I think, not quite the way we're used to thinking about propaganda. We think that, there is more propaganda when the government is not popular, but this should be something different. I think that's there's quite a lot of propaganda in like popular authoritarian regimes. So that's very something to this finding. So the other more interesting things happens when the politician is popular and when the platform is when the advantage of platform is not so big. So we just reverse this inequality. So in this case, if A does not fact check, then the previous situation is repeated. Basically, the politician uses A. In this case, A has all the information and A has an advantage. So all is also using A and there is the same bias. So if A fact checks, then the politician can go to use platform B. And because of this, the politician is going to use platform B. It is going to set quite a low bias. Is going to set a bias such that exactly half of voters also going to use platform B, and the median voter is going to believe this bias. So again, because the bias is low, a swing voter can prefer to go to B because she needs to this information maker decision. In this case, the politician sets the bias such that exactly half of the people use B because she doesn't need any more people. So the population is split in half between the popular platform Facebook and this fringe platform B. And this is a bit like what we observe in the United States, where liberals are more likely to use Facebook and Twitter and conservatives use Parler. So there is this fragmentation of the society among which platforms people are using. The bias has a similar shape that the more popular the position is, the higher is the bias. The larger is the utility of voting against the politician, below is the bias. But also there is an interesting part that we subtract -2m here. So why is that? Because if I'm a politician and I'm operating on a free platform, I need to persuade the people to switch from the popular platform to a less popular platform. And because of this, and if a popular platform is more popular, then I need to offer them more decent information to attract them. So because of this, the politicians' problem depends on the popularity of the more popular platform, and the more popular it is, the more honest she needs to be, and that drives this functional form. So finally, if it so happens that two platforms fact check, then the politician uses both, basically choosing different what to do, and it drives mostly of equilibrium, but it doesn't matter for the result, it always just use A and reserve the correct information. Yes,
So you said there is actually no cost of using a platform.
no. Yeah, I think there is actually a cost of not using the platform because people are addicted to social media nowadays.
I meant for the politician actually. So
Sorry, after politician, no, there is no cost. Maybe they both, we are all humans, so maybe for them it's also true. Yeah, this is a logo of Coup. Coup was an analog of Twitter that the Indian government supported when it had a conflict with Twitter. And so I think that these guys like this, they can make the politicians more immune to fact checking, because the politician can sponsor the creation of something like this and have a credible threat of switching there from the mainstream social media platform. So maybe especially through India where the programmers are based.
will it be related to the size of the market? Meaning that you can actually create a platform in India, while in Hungary it would, I mean, you never have the critical user bases.
Well, maybe it's true. I think maybe like it's just the size of the GDP. The government has more money than it can create. Some other platform. That's good, yeah. But you know, also if like India is so big, then maybe Facebook also like tries to become bigger in this country, comes there earlier and spends more on advertisement, and so this attractiveness of Facebook is also higher. So I think the impact is here is quite ambiguous. Okay, this proposition I just showed you guys in the result in a straightforward way that we can define a metric in this model's probability of making a good choice, which I define as the probability that the politician is good and she wins, plus the probability that the politician is bad and she loses. So it's like correctly guessing the state of the world. It's reported to show that it weekly increases in M and weekly decreases in M, which is the attractiveness of the legal platform, and it weekly decreases in the position of median voter. That if the median voter likes the politician more, this quantity drops. And there are two effects here. First of all, there is fact checking that fact checking is just more likely if M is high, but also we can remember that if M grows, then the bias decreases at some point. So these two effects determine this result. Here is a graphical illustration. So what happens here on the right side of the graph is that E is monopoly because M is so big, basically A fact checks whenever it has an benefit of doing so. And here the impact of M is flat locally because the bias doesn't depend on M anymore. So everyone is already using the bigger platform. And here, that's on the left side, is what you see on the second slide of the results. That if M is higher, then the politician needs to be more honest to attract people to a fringe platform, and therefore the bias decreases, and therefore the probability of making a good choice increases. So we have 5 minutes for discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just to be brief, so the story this model is telling is that paradoxically, if we have a tech monopoly which operates social media, then it has a leverage against populist politicians, cannot go and communicate with voters somewhere else. And because of this, fact checking is more likely, and moreover, the politicians have an incentive to behave. So I can see that there can be some other dangerous tech monopolies, but in this question, it might be that it's not a bad thing. Also, it has some relevance to the US political discussions nowadays, because there are figures like politicians, like academics, like Lina Han, who are advocating for partitioning of tech firms, such as Facebook. I think that while they're smart people and there can be some other good things to such policies, in this respect, it's a bad policy because the smaller firms will have less of a leverage compared to politicians. Moreover, there are discussions of laws which make it easier for people to move their data across social media. Again, monopoly is bad in many respects, but maybe in this respect, allow people to migrate from Facebook and like very quickly move their dating photos can be bad because they might migrate to some kind of something like Parler, where the politician can go and spread disinformation. I think that well, this model is a bunch of simplifications taken together, and there's lots of room for the research. I'd like to hear your ideas about that. One of the direction that I'm pursuing right now, with my co-author also from BME, is that the politicians here the politician type is fixed, and we can also assume that the politician has a choice on how much effort to exert, and this is going to affect our type. One of the people suggested to move in this direction, and there is another paper which we will notice. Also, like voters are behavioral in the real world. There are some interpretive voters, but also there are lots of behavioral biases that people have, like confirmation bias. They like to observe what they already know, and this can, like, this may or may not make the models result different. That's you know, what happens if people just like to have their views confirmed, and it's not quite clear how this is going to change results. Well, I think that's it, and I'm sorry for going over time.
It's fine.
Yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Maybe we have time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience.
Thank you. I liked your model a lot. There was just one point that I did not buy, but by the end, I convinced myself that it's acceptable. Just I would add a lot more explanation. This is the following. I don't see voters switching platforms as a result of their politician or their prime minister switching platform. I really honestly don't see that. Not even the hardcore diehard voters. I don't see them being so, except a very few extremely fanatic voters. I don't really, especially not the voters that could switch their opinions or their vote. What I do see indeed is that people are attracted to platforms where a larger share of the whole surface is going on. So where there's a lot more things going on, I'm attracted to that platform. And the larger the popularity of a politician, that would switch to the other platform, the larger, the less attractive this platform would turn out to be. So this is indeed related somehow, but it's not more subtle than just, you know, a voter going from this platform to the other just because do you understand? So it's I see the connection between the two, but it's like a lot less direct. So I think you would need a bit more explanations.
So yeah, I don't quite see how what you say is different from what I say.
Well, I'm just saying that I don't, if you say that the politician goes from platform A to platform B, this would immediately turn the users go from one platform to the other. I would say, I don't believe you,
Okay,
okay? This is just,
well, but yeah, it kind of also often model things as immediate, which are not exact, which are not immediate in the real world. So here, of course, it was like at first some politicians switched from Facebook to Parler, and then people like one by one started going from Facebook to Twitter, sorry, from Facebook to Parler. And so obviously it's like long, it's not an overnight process, is what you mean?
I mean, it's. You don't exactly know the causality, right? There's no exact causality between politicians switching platforms and people switching to other platforms, right? So we just don't know that.
So you
And
think,
for me, it's unbelievable that anyone would really switch a platform just because Orban Viktor went from one platform to the other. This is just my hunch, but
no, first of all, do you think like what happened is that people started going from Facebook to Parler because of these politicians switch?
no. Is it an established fact, causality or?
Actually, Parler has about 10 million downloads altogether, so I wouldn't say that people have moved to Parler and mass. That's a bit of a.
No, I agree with the point that no, there are a few people who there are a few users of Parler compared to Facebook, and there are even few people who completely turned down Facebook. So it's only this implication that keep people just abandon one platform over the other. So in reality, what happens is just spending less time on one platform and more on the other. And here just a simple way of modeling the fact that well, I am also subscribing to somewhere and I start using it more. So with I think with the causality arguments, I realized, so of course I don't even have any empirics here. However, like if you remember the story, then I think it was first the politicians started moving to Parler and then the people. So it's hard to tell the other story that the politicians somehow foresaw that people are going to switch platforms and also started to use platforms. But we have a story like Bolsonaro in Brazil who explicitly told people to switch platforms, and we have this India
They
story.
didn't.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't because well, they didn't, but it's also a part of my model because because Brazil Facebook is so big. In India, I think this happened off the equilibrium path that the government started to promote food, and among other things, it's prompted the tech companies to back down. But I think the fact that the Indian government started to promote the social media shows that indeed it was a credible threat for the platforms. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, one of the things that you mentioned is that, of course, one politician goes, but you still have hundreds of friends on Facebook, right? So, but I think recent changes on how Facebook works might actually expedite these kind of changes, because if I understand correctly, while a few years ago, half of your Facebook posts were about, or on your wall messages were about holiday photos of friends, I understand these have been moved down on the priority rank of Facebook, and now you see more posts that you kind of actually enjoy or you are interested in. And I guess somebody who is active in politics, I'm not talking about a politician, but an active voter, these might be very often politics related news. And I can easily imagine if certain politicians move out of that platform, then you will find less and less political posts that match your preferences or interests, and then as opposed to what was in the past, and that can kind of expedite the process of you actually finding a platform where you read what you like to see or what you want to see.
Yeah, that's a good comment because Facebook indeed tries to promote what keeps you engaged, and we're talking about like political part of Facebook, and so here because you're going to see more politics in your newsfeed, then maybe it's going to become more relevant for your decision. So yeah.
Also, I mean, of course, the clear model is where the politician chooses the other platform rather than this one. But I think there have been some cases where especially in Hungary, I read in the news that I think there was a politician whose account was suspended or something like this at some point. And I can easily imagine that if this is a right-wing politician, then some of the right-wing voters will say, oh, okay, so Facebook is left-wing, so this is obviously not for me. And then they try to find something else. If this emotion actually results in whatever it could result in, I don't know, but this is a situation where actually voters can leave a platform because they perceive that the platform is against that. But of course, this is more about the swing voters where I don't know if this applies.
No, I think this is more like a topic for other research because here it looks only at fact checking. It doesn't look at suspending people from Facebook, which is obviously another big thing. Yeah.
Last other question.
Yeah, my main concern is that you are assuming that the voter assumption is homogeneous in behavior, and also the politician is behaving similarly with respect to different voters, right? And my point is that even Trump behaves totally different in front of his own constituency when he was somewhere in a swing. Somewhere he had to somehow convince the voters to turn their behavior. So then there are two major parameters: somehow convince and also to mobilize. And when I'm meeting with indoctrinated voters, my main task as a politician to convince them to be mobilized, not to convince them at all. That's their ideas. So then, in this respect, I think you have a totally different type of setting. I do not want to go enforce you to go outside the model, but what we observe that the main issue is here that in front of this heterogeneous voters, how to optimize my gain in this respect in maximum.
Okay, so to the first question. Yeah, I don't say that voters are homogeneous. I introduce this parameter in which they differ. Right, so they all care about the competence of the politician, but they also care about this parameter R, which measures their affinity to the politician.
Because then you said that your model is mainly for the swing.
Well, yes, it's for the swing voters, but the swing voters are also different. So there's swing voters who are.
Okay, I agree that you want to more or less applicable. Not for indoctrinate. That's my point.
Well,
because it doesn't matter if you like or not, doesn't matter.
Well, for the indoctrinated, yes, like in reality, what politicians do is that they try to mobilize voters, but there will be in this model to be introducing another decision. Let's see what it go with the election or not, and I think that it might. It might be complicated and like not just mathematically complicated, but also tell some story which is unrelated to like what I want to focus on. So I want to make the model simple because to explicitly show this effect that there is social media and people want to switch or not, and so I'm not sure that any other political effects would make it better, than even if it would be somewhat more realistic. Yeah. Also, like, of course, there is like I agree with you. Politicians behave differently for different voters, and there is micro-targeting in the United States where I can send different things to individual voters, and so maybe in this model I could also say that P is a function of R now, and not a single parameter. And I think this is something exciting to do, but maybe not a project because here it's not related to the main message of the model. Yeah, but thank you for the comments, and I think that's since I'm working in this field, it could be like very relevant to what I do in the future. Any other questions?
I think we are over time, so I suggest we continue in a more informal setting. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So,